Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's session on second chances. Just a couple things before we get started. Please keep your microphones and cameras off during today's presentation to eliminate distractions. If you have questions, type them in the chat box and I will relay them to our presenter as we go along. Also, if you need a certificate of completion, please email Stacy at the end of today's presentation and she will get that out to you. So with that, I will hand it over to our presenter, Paulette Paulson.
All right, well, hello, everybody. Everybody's day is hectic, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, just as we started that, my neighbors started mowing their lawn, my kids came in with groceries, and the dogs are whining. So if you hear any of that, please try to think beyond that. My name is Paulette, and my passion, and luckily my employment, is working to support affordable housing and safe housing in the state of North Dakota. I worked in rural development, USDA rural development for 20 years, doing multifamily housing. So I was reviewing all the owners and were they eligible and helping tenants. And one day I decided I wanted to do more grassroots work. And so I left the government. And I've started a couple property management companies that really are focused on second chances. And so today we're going to talk about second chances. Let's go back to the beginning. And of course, when we think of the past, I always think of the good things and I kind of forget the bad things like, oh, my kids are so good when they were little, but really I remember the days I was pulling my hair out. So I remember back in the day when I used to do inspections for multifamily housing and I'd go to a senior property and it would be really pretty beautiful. And I remember one of the tenants wanting to show me the back of her toilet tank because she had cleaned it for the inspection that day because she wanted her house to look perfect. And then she had homemade cookies and coffee for me. So I remember that. And I just don't know that it happens as much anymore. Our tenants have changed, mostly because the rural communities have changed. A lot of the seniors have moved into larger communities. We've turned a lot of our senior projects, especially for USDA, into family units. And I know I was studying about addiction, and you guys all know much more than I do on that, but addiction and mental health are becoming struggles for people. And so our tenant base is really different than it used to be. And so it only makes sense that we have to change how we look at housing and how we have to change how we manage housing. So the first thing when I was creating this portfolio or this presentation, I thought we should have a definition of what housing is. Because if you aren't in our arena of owners and service providers and management, housing is just housing. You either own a house or you rent an apartment. And did we really know that there is a difference about apartments? So what types of housing is out there in North Dakota? We have what might be called, now this is just my definitions and what we kind of considered in our property management company, but you have the high-end market rate. That's like the penthouses, and that's the very high, like if I'm not going to buy a house, but I have money to buy a really, really nice apartment, that's kind of the high-end market rate. Maybe only a percentage of people could probably afford that. And then the next level is just regular market rate. You don't have income restrictions. You don't have to worry about, are you eligible for a subsidy or rental assistance? It's just market rate. It's what we probably all know it. If we didn't work in this arena, is we get an apartment, we show them we don't have bad credit, and we can pay the rent. That's just market rate. Then we have what I feel is kind of like tax credit. Tax credit is where it's funded by different organizations like North Dakota Housing Finance, and you have to fit under certain income categories. Maybe it's 60% of median income, 50, 40, 30, and it goes on and on. And some of the tax credits are subsidized. But then the last maybe area that we used to call low income, and our management company and myself doesn't use that because it has such a negative connotation. It's subsidized housing. It's housing, it's apartments that come with some assistance to pay your rent. So for the most part, in those areas, we just call it affordable housing, tax credit, and like USDA rural development and HUD properties, we really just call them affordable housing. We don't call them low income housing. Back in the day, that was kind of like, oh, not in my backyard. And so we're trying to change how we direct conversations. So before we go any further on this, when I try to explain what our second chance idea was and how we put that into place, I want to make sure that you guys all realize that we had to go through talking with our attorney a lot. We had to show her our lease and our community rules, our tenant selection criteria, the memorandum of understanding that we started writing. So anything I talk about today, this is not legal advice. That if you want to try this out, maybe you're already trying it, but you have to get your own attorney's legal advice. I am not an attorney. I am just telling you our story. And hopefully from my story, maybe it might help you see if you can change anything in your industry. The other thing that I want to mention, because we did it in the beginning, is we can get very passionate about this. We can hear a story of somebody that has struggled with trying to get housing, and you bend your rules. Maybe you bend them quite a bit to make sure that this person can get in. We're telling you now, don't do that without talking to an attorney. In the beginning of my career, I remember somebody saying that a certain portion of people that end up in court and are getting sued for fair housing is because they followed their heart and they tried to be kind. So what I am saying is it is great to be kind, but do it with legal advice behind you, because that truly is the time that you can kind of get in trouble. So now we're going to get into the fun part. We want to give people a second chance. We kind of have to in the environment that we live in. Our owners, of course, want our properties to be full. But back in the day, we used to wait for the perfect tenant or the near perfect tenant, and they're out there. But there's also a lot of people that have had a really rough time at life, and so their credit history isn't perfect, and their criminal background isn't perfect. So when our group was talking, our management company was talking, we figured out there's several pieces to the puzzle. So we're going to talk about those pieces of the puzzle and how we can put them together and make opportunities for a lot of people. Plus, keep the owner's interest at heart and make sure that he's still happy with his bottom line. So we have kind of have to juggle a lot of balls. So we're going to go through pieces of the puzzle. First of all, our management company sat down and we said, we have to find a different way to manage. It's not working. We're having more turnovers. We're having more evictions. We're having damage to our units that's more than we used to have. And our management staff is getting stretched because they're getting called to do a lot of things that they shouldn't have to. We have to remember our management staff are amazing, but they're not counselors. They're not addiction counselors. They're not psychologists. They're not caseworkers. They're none of that. Yet we're called upon them to do that all the time because our tenants need that support. And we were kind of drawing a line and saying, we can't do this by ourselves anymore. I was kind of thinking about it, and I thought about it. Remember when it used to say it takes a village to raise a family? It's changed to, it takes a village to open the doors to affordable housing. And that's what we're going to talk about is our village, our pieces of the puzzle. So first of all, we're going to talk about ownership. I have a whole bunch of disclosures to make. Like this will not fit for everybody. One owner it might fit and another owner it won't. So you need an owner that of course is interested in his bottom line, that his property is being successful, but that he knows the trends are changing and he wants to be innovative to be able to keep that bottom line looking really good. We do say right now to the owner that we're going to use as an example, we have said we'd like to be more flexible in who we rent to, but we will not at this time rent to sex offenders or violent crime offenders. We're not there. We're not there. All we're trying to do is maybe be more flexible in our tenant selection criteria. Plus, what we're finding out is some owners, as they start building tax credit projects, the application will give them credit if they're working with support agencies and have a housing coordinator on staff. So that just kind of gives you a clue that this is becoming a bigger picture than just my little management company. So we need to have owners that are interested in what we have to say and that are flexible in being innovative. Next is management. You need to have a management company that is willing to be slightly risky in their being able to rent to individuals. You also need staff that are open to that too. So in our company, we do have a strong belief in second chances, but of course not being the only one at the table. So we believe in second chances as we walk beside our partners. Again, that's owners, and that is us. And that is federal and state partners also. So I can't say enough about North Dakota Housing Finance Agency because they've seen that we need something that will encourage owners and management companies to rent to people that maybe have some background issues. Open Doors is one of them where they will kind of put up some money to say, hey, landlord or hey, owner, will you rent to somebody if they're getting adequate supports from support agencies, checking in on you on a regular basis, but it doesn't work? North Dakota Housing Finance has opportunity for that landlord to get some of that money back in case there were damages and I believe late rent. And again, all the partners here, you guys probably know a lot more about that. But my main point being is we also needed other partners such as state partners being there supporting us in different ways. And they believe that there is a need to change. Our agencies, our support agencies are such a huge piece of the puzzle. They are the partners that are at the table with us every day, talking about what's going on in our property, what's going on with our clients and our tenants. They are willing to step up and say, we will, support tenants that are coming to you that would otherwise get denied. And we're willing to help your staff in being there when the tenant chooses to make a bad choice. We could not do this without the support agencies that we now have under an MOU, which again, I will talk soon about that. Then the last piece of the puzzle, of course, is the clients of the support agencies, soon to be our tenants. We need people that are willing, that can first of all believe that they're going to get a second chance. and that they believe in themselves as much as we believe in them, that they can be a successful tenant. We've seen that we can flex our tenant selection criteria to get people into our apartments. And that's where we kind of sometimes drop the ball, because we go, okay, they got housing, there we go. We marked it off. We were that flexible company that let somebody that had bad credit move in. And then we didn't do anything after that. We didn't support them. And as soon as they made bad choices, we had to evict. And I don't know across the state, but eviction is really expensive. It's expensive because it takes a while, because attorneys are involved and they charge legal fees. Because it takes so long, sometimes another month of rent has gone by. And if a tenant is angry because they're getting evicted, they sometimes cause quite a bit of damage in a unit. So none of that is what we want. We want to avoid that at all costs. So now we have our partners. We have our owner, a management company. We have our state, North Dakota Housing Finance. We have support agencies, and I don't even want to start mentioning some names, but I think you know who you are. Free Through Recovery Groups, 1915I, any organization that is there to help a person get employment, get a house, work through their addiction, get them transportation, connect them to other services. That's who you are. So it's a wonderful partnership. And of course, the tenant. So those pieces of the puzzle are all there. But when we sat down, we weren't quite sure how to put them all together. We were very blessed that we got 2 grants that helped us try to develop a concept of how do you put into place second chances and still meet the fair housing laws and still protect the owner and his investment. And then the second grant was, if you're able to get that into place, how do you analyze it and make sure it's successful? So here's what we did. I took an owner with me, and luckily we have this most wonderful owner. He's kind of my boss too, but anyway. We went and met with some of the support agencies, and we said to them, if you're willing to sign a memorandum of understanding, and that you will, in your clients, find a couple individuals that have been doing really well. They have employment. They've been going to all their aftercare meetings, and they're really, really wanting to be successful. They are ready for their own home. And you come to us and you guarantee that you will back them and back us as management company, that you will partner with us 3, them, the tenant, and us. That when you bring this person to us, you say, I really believe in them. And here's how I'm going to show that. I'm going to meet with them. Most of our supporting agencies meet weekly with the tenants. They go into their apartment to make sure that it is just being kept up. That they commit that if there are any work orders or any issues, that they will, with the tenant, come to the landlord and say, hey, this is broke. Yes, my tenant broke it, but they're willing to pay for it, but they broke the door. We're just reporting that. They agree that if the tenant has a lease violation, and so in our company, we send out strike letters or violation letters to the tenant. We also send a copy of that to the supporting agency. And then the supporting agency and the tenant work together on a plan on how not to have that violation happen again. An example of that would be one of our tenants has a friend that can cause havoc when he comes and visits, but the tenant is not strong enough to tell his friend not to visit. So he gets a violation letter for a friend coming and causing noise, and maybe some damage to the apartment. So the supporting agency and the tenant comes to the landlord and says, will you please put a no trespass order on this person? We really need to protect our tenant from the visitor right now because they're really struggling and they don't need these friends that are pulling them in a lot of different ways. So the agency says that they will do things like that to find a solution to help the tenant. And then after hours, when we used to always get the call from the neighbor saying the tenant is doing this, then we will call the supporting agency and they will support us. So we, again, are not the human service. We're not social services. We're not the addiction counselor, but we are part of this partnership that wraps around this tenant so that they can keep stable housing. Once again, it's not about just getting a person in the door. It's about making sure that person can stay stable and have successful housing. It's good for the owner. It's good for us as management. It's good for that tenant because they can have housing. They can work on their mental health. They can work on making sure their kids can go to school, that they can vote, that they can find employment. Because we all know if we don't have a home, it's really hard to be able to work on any of that. So I got my owner and I said, come on, let's go talk to all these agencies. So we talked to, I bet 4 or 5 of them. And 4 or 5 of them wanted to sign up. They looked at it. There's no financial obligation, but it does say that you will support this tenant as much as you can. And you will work with the landlord in communicating if there's issues. That has worked really well in one of our projects. How has it worked well is that my staff now feels supported. They have somebody to call when a tenant is having some problems with their mental health or with their addiction. They don't have to be on call 24/7 for tenants. We don't need to immediately evict. We can work through the process. The memorandum of understanding has gone through and evolved into things like we're asking the supporting agencies if they will look into making sure that they're working with North Dakota Housing and their Open Doors program. Some of the things that they're asking their tenants to do on their while they're working with their clients isn't something that we could ask a tenant to do. So I want to be clear about that. If a supporting agency says to their client, I do not want you to have any visitors for the first 3 months that you live in Porter Place. And the client says, okay, if that means that I can have housing, I would agree to that. That's something between the agency, the supporting agency, and their client. We could never say that to anybody. We can never say, hey, you can't have friends over here. That would be a fair housing issue. We cannot make that a condition of our lease. But the agency supporting the client can say, don't you think it's a good idea that maybe you don't have any company for a couple months? And why don't we tell Paulette that's what we're going to really try to do? And that if she lets you move in, this is what our goals are. We're going to try and not have company. We're going to pay our rent on time. We're going to continue with our job. So those are some things that we can do. Now, the MOU was created, and we said we had lots of agencies that were willing to sign it. But there was one thing that we had to do, and I mentioned that in the beginning. we had to go and make sure our attorneys were okay with that memorandum of understanding and that we were able to change our tenant selection criteria slightly. And the only change that we really made with our tenant selection criteria was that if a tenant that had a bad background, or a credit history that had some adverse credit items on it, or a criminal background that did have some felonies on it, that had some misdemeanors, that were not violent, and that they were not a sex offender, that we could waive our selection criteria if they were supported by an agency who had a memorandum of understanding in place. So we had to go to our agencies that we work with, such as RD and HUD and North Dakota Housing Finance. We ran that by them, and our legal. And they all agreed that that sounded like a really good plan. So again, you have to go to your attorneys and make sure that every step of the way that they are there with you and that it is legal. And we still visit with our legal team and say, okay, it's working pretty good. Is there anything new in the law that we might have to change? So I can't say it enough that you definitely have to talk to your legal team on any of these changes. The memorandum of understanding works really well. It creates a partnership that allows us to give second chances to people that are sometimes labeled hard to house because nobody wants to take a chance with them. This is not for all owners. This is not for all property management companies. But when you find the right, when they click and you're able to do it, it gives people a chance to find a home. And often they also get to have their children back. They get to have a job. They get to actually create healthy friendships. And many times they just want to do anything around the property. You know, they really are very appreciative that they have a safe home and that they can show others that it can work. The importance of this is if we can show other owners and other landlords that a partnership like this can work and that we can give people a second chance, then that will give those individuals more options in which to choose to live. Because if you don't have any bad credit and you've never had a misdemeanor or a felony, your choices of housing are endless. But if you have any of those, if you have a felony on your record, sometimes you don't have a choice at all. Or maybe the only choice you have is a place that's not even safe, a place that might be unsafe even in a structure, let alone around neighbors that are using and maybe enticing you to use again. So right now, it does work. I'm looking through here again. The adjustments that we're making with our MOU is that we want them to use the open doors through North Dakota Housing Finance. That the agencies are asking their clients if they're okay with like not having visitors for the first while until they really kind of settle into their apartment. This is successful. We have received some funding to not only put this into place, but define what success is. The success have to be that we allow somebody into our apartment. They're a perfect tenant. I guess that would be called success, and we could mark that on our log. Does it mean that we let them come in and they have some violations? You know, they kind of are causing us some headaches. But with the partners that are in place, we're able to work with them and help them realize that their actions are not actions that you would have in an apartment, that you're not being a good neighbor. You need to budget better. So, okay, you haven't paid rent on time the last 2 months, but you're going to pay it on time this month. So is that success that we've ran into hiccups, but we've been able to improve? Maybe progress, but not yet perfection? Is it success when somebody comes in and you give them an opportunity and they can't do it? They can't do it. They can't stay away from their addiction. They can't be alone in an apartment. So they always have somebody visiting them. They just break every rule that I think that we have ever written. But between them and their agency, they come to the landlord and say, this is not working. We want to give our notice. We're going to make sure the apartment's in good shape, and we need to move on. Thank you for the opportunity, but this just isn't working. We want to avoid eviction, so we're going to make sure that we leave the proper way. Is that success? I would say in all three circumstances, it's a success. I have 2 stories. I could have a Kleenex box because, all of these stories make me cry. But we did have one. He was an 18-year-old young man that had an opportunity to not go to jail if he could find housing and have enough people to support him. So he did. He had a church and he had an accountant. It was a really mixture of support agencies, but he had the support group, he had an accountant, and he had some family members. And they came to us. This is before we had our memorandum of understanding. And they said, please let him in. We will be there. We'll make sure that his rent is collected. He's going to come to, their church group is going to support him and give him brand new furniture. And they're just going to set him up for success. And we gave him a chance. Unfortunately, the young man didn't make good choices, ended up having, I can't remember the crime that he committed, but he ended up having a lot of guns in his car, I think is what it was. So this poor young man ended up in jail, in prison for quite a while. But the support group came, they got him to give us a proper notice. They came in actually and cleaned the apartment. He got his security deposit back. And he doesn't have an eviction on his record. And we're certainly not going to give him a bad landlord reference 5 years from now. I believe that he saw that people believed in him and gave him a chance. He was young and he made a mistake. But I still feel that was a success. We had another one recently where a man had severe addictions with alcohol. And he just was not able to be able to function in a large apartment complex. And so his agency sat with him and he said to his agency, I need to go to treatment and I need to leave now. And his agency came, helped him pack up his stuff, drove him to treatment, gave a proper notice, and was able to leave. And so that's just 2 successes that I can just tell you off the top of our head. Would I have liked a tenant that stayed there for the next 10 years? Yes, but I don't see as many of those. I see some of them. But what I want to see is people that know we believe in them, that we give them second chances, and either they move because they are now able to even find a different type of an apartment, maybe one that is not affordable or subsidized. Maybe they're able now to buy a home. Or maybe they just find out that this type of apartment complex is not what they need to be able to be successful. And they learn how to be a good tenant and give the proper notice to leave. So this memorandum of understanding is an amazing document. We do require the agency to sign it to show the owners that they are in on the partnership. Some agencies haven't worked out, and that's okay. Maybe it's because we do have in there that if there's too many tenants that fire them or just aren't successful in the beginning and we're not getting that support from that supporting agency, they don't call us back and we don't have a good partnership, we decide to void that memorandum of understanding. Or maybe they don't like how we work with the tenants and they can void the memorandum of understanding. So this may not be for all of you out there, but for any community and any owner, if you can find those 5 partners that work really well together and believe in second chances, I do believe something like this can work. In one of our tax credit properties just recently, the owner got points in their tax credit application because they committed to having an MOU with a service provider and also a housing coordinator at the site. So you can see that it is building and it is growing. And in some cases, for owners to maybe get those extra points in tax credit, the state is also kind of maybe dangling that carrot and saying, hey, this works. You don't have to do it, but if you do, you might get an extra point or 2. So it's worth for your owners to at least look into and maybe just try it on one small property and see how it works. I think it's great because it is that village that helps open the doors to affordable housing. One of the partners alone cannot do it. We couldn't do it by ourselves. The agencies, if they had no landlord that was willing to partner with them, could they do it by themselves? And certainly the state couldn't if nobody was going to come and utilize their program. So I believe that it can be successful. So that's kind of my, if you could only see me, I could talk forever about this because it really has worked. The evictions that we've had in the property where we do allow the memorandum of understanding, the evictions have come from people that don't have that support. So I think that says a lot, is that it works. It avoids evictions and it just supports the people that need it the most right now. And so that is my presentation. That's my name, Paulette Paulson. My email, if you certainly want to email me any questions on how we started this, I can certainly give you drafts of it, but again, it's only my draft. You have to take it to your attorney, but we're certainly able and willing to help because the more people that join this innovative way to manage, the more options people that need second chances have. So Cheryl, with that, I am done with my presentation.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Has anybody tried this yet? Does anybody have this kind of approach already? Because I would love to hear about how it's working for others.
Well, this is Jake Ruder, and obviously I'm not doing this, but I'm really impressed with how you've designed this. Awesome stuff. It really does give people a second chance. I asked the question about opening doors, which you addressed immediately in the next slide. So I think that's terrific. If housing finance is able to make some adjustments to their their work, they should have money for opening doors for folks that are not on Medicaid or Medicaid expansion starting
Oh.
next year as well, Paulette. So that will also expand the number of people that would have access to what you're describing. So, but awesome program. I hope other property managers will think about this. Would make a lot less, um, forced and problematic evictions. Gives people real second chances. So, way to go.
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat. How much has the eviction rate gone down with the MOU?
I would say, well, I can actually say that I'm just kind of counting in our one because we did have a smaller amount there. I would say by 20% easily. Easily by 20%. Because in some cases, they're still leaving, but we don't have to evict. That's a big amount when you think our eviction costs are, I don't know what everybody else is, but our eviction costs are anywhere between $800 to $1,000, depending on, type of eviction and how complicated it is. So if we're able to stop 3 to 4 evictions, a quarter or whatever it might be, that's $4,000 that we just saved the owner. It is well worth trying. Just monetarily, if you don't want to get all mushy like I do and have these, even if you just look at the bottom line, it is worth it. Monetarily, it is worth it. And then if you add the vision and the passion of giving people a second chance, it's priceless. It is priceless.
How long do the providers follow with the MOU?
Okay, that is great. So we have we allow, let's say an MOU agency comes in, and we'll just call him George, and they come with us with George and say, George is a great client. We want him to live here, and we're willing to support him in every way. And about 9 months later, they come to us and they go, George doesn't need us anymore. He's doing really great and he doesn't need our supports. And so when they do that, when they sign off on George because he really doesn't need the supportive agency anymore, then we mark it in their file that we don't have to give them any violations anymore, and he's just there as a tenant. Others, they might need to support a tenant for many months and through many programs because they're just not able to function without that support. So we don't direct that. The MOU that they have with the owner, that just stays in place as long as the partners want to continue working, as long as the support agency and the owner want to work together. There's not an end date for that MOU, but the clients themselves is all directed by the support agency and the tenant, and they just need to let us know when that partnership is successfully ended. If it was not successfully ended, we're looking at our legal team right now to get some direction. Let's say somebody's using the agency to get in, like, oh, I've heard about this and I'm going to use ABC agency and they're going to support me and I'm going to get in and then I'm going to fire them. Because that happens, guys. I mean, I would love to be all lollipops and unicorns, but that does happen. We are looking at our legal team to see that if they fire ABC agency and they don't replace them with another support agency, we are looking to see if we can't go into immediate eviction because the conditions that they moved into and are noted on the lease were not followed. But that part is still the rest of the story coming. We just don't want people to take advantage of these wonderful agencies that are willing to come and support these people, and then they fire them just to get into housing. We're not going to let that happen. So we're working with our attorneys right now to assure that the language that we use in our lease, when we do waive our selection criteria, that it allows us to, it would allow us to, you know, just ask them to leave, or if they don't, to evict. I hope that answers the question.
And did you say you have a specific property that has the MOU?
Yes. Currently, currently, I think we have 3 properties. We have Boulevard Avenue Apartments, and we have Century View that is just constructed in Bismarck. And that is actually one that the owners got points on by us having a housing coordinator in the office and having an MOU. And then we do have one MOU at the Prairie Ridge Apartments in Fargo. So we actually have 3. Our first one was with Boulevard Avenue Apartments in Bismarck. We've added 2 more, and we have another one in Rolette County that's asking if we could start that there also. So go slow, but steady and slow, and make sure that it works, and then you can start adding on. Always talk to your attorney.
Will you share the draft of the MOU?
Yeah, I can do that. That won't be a problem. It's pretty basic. So you can make whatever changes you want to make or clarification. It's always in development, but yes, I can do that. I'll have to pull it out somewhere that's a clean copy. Can I just send it to you guys?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for today? All right. Well, if anybody comes up with any questions, please let us know and we can forward them to Paulette. Again, if you need a certificate of completion, please email Stacy and she will get that out to you. With that, next week's presentation is the Nervous System 101, Calming the Stress Response. So hope you can all join us for that one. Again, thank you for attending today's session and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Paulette.
Thank you, Paulette.
Thank you. I love talking about that.
I'm going to reach out to you about this right after this,
That sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Bye.